it would be like to the area you're at right now, right?
Yep.
Even if it's not my area of residence, right?
No.
Thank you.
بسم الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب عليه السلام يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله اشفعي لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا ساداتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نكحتم المؤمنات ثم طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن فما لكم عليهن من عدة تعتدونها فمتعوهن وسرحوهن سراحا جميلا صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Continuing with the Tafsir of Surah Ahzab, I recited for you ayat number 49. And if we get to, I'll recite ayat number 50 as well. Basically, the discussion between these two ayat, 49 and 50, is in accounts in regards to the concept of nikah and as well as talaq. Particularly in this ayat, which says, O you who have faith, when you marry faithful women and then divorce them before you touch them, there shall be no period for you to reckon, but provide for them and release them in a graceful manner. In one ayat, in a short ayat like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains the marriage, the divorce, the dowry, and amicably disassociating yourselves with the partner or separating yourself. So we see that the word nikah here refers to marriage. And the word tamassuhunna or touch between husband and wife relationship refers to the consummation of the marriage. The word towards the end, which is sarahan jamila, means divorce in a graceful manner. So when you do divorce, what do? You leave each other in a very graceful manner, where there's no grudges left, where there aren't any hatred, animosity, and you part ways because you're of course not going to be seeing each other. The word iddat is also used in this ayat. It says, min iddatin ta'taddunaha. Idda, we all know what the word idda is, or iddat, as we use in Urdu as well. Iddat is the waiting period for women that they have to observe after a divorce, which means to be patient until remarriage. That's what basically iddat means, that they cannot marry within this waiting period known as the iddat. Now, iddat of divorce is 3 months. Thalathatu quru, as has appeared in another ayat of Quran, the 3 monthly cycles. And iddat after husband's death is 4 months and 10 days. So the extra month and 10 days that is added is due to the mourning, due to the being saddened by the death of your husband. So here we understand that the concept of iddah sometimes is misunderstood. People may have had legal divorce or they've been separated due to legal means for years. And then once the Islamic divorce happens, they say, why do we need to now observe the iddat? Because the purpose, I'm sure all of you understand, the purpose behind iddat and the waiting period is so that after women go through the monthly cycles for 3 months, it is clear that there are nothing in them as far as from the previous husband is concerned, and therefore they're good to go ahead and marry someone else. But if a person has already been separated for a couple of years, then how does that even make sense? Well, these are the ahkam. Of course, we don't know the true reasons behind it. That is the reason that has been told to us, that after waiting, even though after 1 monthly cycle it should be enough, Allah says no, 3 monthly cycles. The reason 3 months is given is one of the reasons that ulama mentioned primarily is due to the fact that there's a possibility, because within these 3 months, husband must maintain the wife, right? Even after having divorced, he is still responsible for maintenance of the wife. It is a possibility that within this 3 months, there might be what? Ruju', and they might get back together. So that is the reason it's mentioned to be 3 months. Otherwise, 1 month would have been sufficient in many cases. The following people need not observe iddat. So there are certain women, after they get divorced, they don't need to observe the iddat. This ayat talks about that as well. Those who didn't consummate the marriage, as the ayat says, لَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ, that you did not touch. So that's the metaphor from consummation. And a woman who is, in menopause, meaning she is free from the monthly cycles and she's probably 50 or 60 years old, and therefore they don't need to observe iddat. They get divorced here, the next moment they can go ahead and remarry. There's nothing wrong upon them. They don't have to go through the 3 months waiting period, because there's no concept of wiladat for them. Because there's no concept for wiladat for them, they don't need to wait for another moment and they can remarry right after. In ayat number 236 of Surah Baqarah, we read that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands men. Now that was just the fiqhi aspect of it. Now we come to more moral aspect, the ethical aspect of divorce. This is something which we need to educate our community as well, because as a lot of divorces happen within the community, these are the instructions that we need. 236 of Baqarah, we read that Allah commands the men to pay the dowries in a reasonable amount according to the husband's financial ability if the divorce happens before consummation. So even if there was no consummation of the marriage and you divorce your wife, then still you have to pay the dowry, half of it, but still you have to pay. Because that person was within your life, even if it was for 1 day, you still have to pay the dowry. Fifth Imam Muhammad Baqir ﷺ said, those women who have been divorced return to their father's house with fear, with grief, with sometimes shame, brought by others. So you should calm their hearts with gifts as much as you can. فَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ وَسَرِّحُوهُنَّ. These two words reflect on, monetary help, because of course, who doesn't like to receive money? But of course, they're going through a sad period in their life. Nothing can cherish them. But if some money comes in their way, and if they are relinquished in a very amicable way, as is mentioned, sarrahuhunna jamila, sirahan jamila, graceful manner, then that will be something which is a calming aspect in their life. A graceful sending does not only mean that the woman should be provided with something on divorce, but this also that the separation should be adopted in a gentle, manly way without any kind of vilification. That's the real aspect of it. When Allah says, فَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ وَسَرِّحُوهُنَّ سَرَاحًا جَمِيلًا, it's not referring towards just the monetary aspect that you give something. That is an obligation on you. You have to give regardless. There was consummation or not, you still have to pay them. Pay the dowry, full or half. That's obligatory upon you. That's wajib. You're not doing any favor by doing so. But the real aspect of this sirahan jamila, parting in a graceful manner, refers to how you end this relationship. There should be, without any kind of vilification. If a man does not happen to like, this wife of his, or there has been some other causes of complaint due to which he does not want to keep this marriage going, he should divorce her like a gentleman and send her away like a gentleman. He should not start mentioning her faults, relating his complaints against her before people, so as to also prejudice, to make these people also prejudice about her. All the problems was in her. She was the one cause of all of the separation that I went through. Of course, the women would not be going around saying this openly because of her own hijab and fear and shame that might come about with it. But husband might go around saying this. That woman was always like this. The women are always like this. They create all of this, and that's why I had to let go of her, because she brought this upon me. This, that. If you have separated, now sharing any of this will not do any good to you, will not do any good to her. It will only be harmful to you and her, because it's going to lower your credibility. Next time you go and get married, it's going to go ahead and bring shame upon her, because you're putting accusations after accusations. And thirdly, it will create this concept of animosity which of course is forbidden in some cases. If it's something which is a slander, if it's something which is a lie that you're associating with this individual, that itself is haram in the bargah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This instruction of the Quran clearly shows that annexing the enforcement of divorce to the permission of the local council or court is fully against the wisdom and the spirit of divine law. Yes, you live in this land, you refer to the court so that you can settle the legal manner, legal aspect of it. But to, send dirt toward each other, to, send accusations and slurs towards each other, get the lawyers to go ahead and file this complaint, that complaint, which didn't even exist. All of that is nothing which is not acceptable. And so for in that case, there remains no chance of sending her away gracefully. If you're already fighting in the court of law, imagine this husband and wife, they're getting divorced, they're fighting in the court of law. In front of a judge, there are accusations being thrown at each other. And they're working on, for example, the financial. And, in some cases, this is unfortunately a normal scenario nowadays. Well, a lot of men would go ahead and talk about their ghayrat, their zeal. When it comes to some of these matters, where's the ghayrat? Where's the zeal? They're trying to look for every penny that they can get from, for example, the women. So the revilement and the vilification do inevitably result even if the man does not so will. Moreover, the words of the verse also do not admit that the power of the man to divorce should be bound up with the permission of a local council or a court. The verse is clearly giving the married man the power to divorce and placing it all on him, that it is your right. You should not be going out to something else to go ahead and get this divorce. Meaning what? If it's a legal requirement in the country that you live in, that you have to legally also dissolve, to that extent it's permissible because you have to legally and dissolve the marriage. But it should not be more beyond than that. It should not be anything beyond that. Now, a lot of time when cases come to us of divorce, we don't have the authority. We are not titled by the state, and there's no mandate, there's no power in our hand to go ahead and, decide the legal manner. Nor will people listen to us if I was to say, well, you will be paying this much alimony, you'll be paying this much child support, and this is how they're not going to pay attention to what I am suggesting. That's why the court is needed for those things to be settled. Because no matter how brave they are in front of us, in front of the judge, they will not say a word. In front of the authorities, they will not utter a word of nonsense. So therefore, from this, the object of the verse is clearly seems to be that in order to prevent divorce from being taken lightly, the man should be placed under the burden of financial responsibility so that he himself uses his power of divorce with sense. Then now that I have this power to divorce, now there's so much financial responsibility placed upon me that I have to settle the divorce, settle the dowry. I have to also provide the alimony. If there are any children involved, I have to provide the child support. He thinks about it 100 times before he goes toward dissolution of this marriage. And there's no chance of an external interference in the internal affairs of the two families. Unfortunately, there are a lot of these cases that come about. By the time some of these cases come to us for any sort of reconciliation, it's already been in the court for a year. Many times things that have come to our attention, they've already been fighting a case in the court for a year. They've been, trying to take anything that they can, and the verbiage of the legal documentations. I remember once there was a case a few years ago that the case was already in the court. Divorce was inevitable. And the boy reaches out to me and he says, Maulana, can you convey this message to my wife? I said, well, you're not allowed to text her? You're still legally married. You're still shara'an married to each other because I have not dissolved the marriage yet. That legal divorce, while it has, a rule of law, on the law of the land, That has no, binding to the Islamic law. You could be legally divorced, but you're still Islamically husband and wife. So what do you mean? You're not in communication? He said, no, court orders, we cannot communicate directly. I said, well, then how are you supposed to communicate? Well, through the lawyers. I said, then go through the lawyer. He said, Maulana, if I go through the lawyer, I'll have to pay $400. If I go through a lawyer, I don't know if it's true, that's how much it costs to go and communicate something through your client, through the lawyer, because the lawyer will reach out to the client's lawyer, they will convey the message. I said, all right, sure. I don't know if I'm doing something legal or illegal, I'll call her. So I called her and I gave her the message that this is what your husband was saying, and without any cost. But nonetheless, just imagine, $400 just for the verbiage. $400 just to change one noun into verb, one pronoun into the name. That's how much it costs in the legal courts, in the legal system. Now, nothing against the courts and nothing against the judges and nothing against the lawyers. They have to make their money as well. But the people who are fighting for this, what are you going to stay with at the end of the day when you're throwing so much money in the hands and the mouth of the lawyers and the judges, and you're basically going to be broke yourself? So something to think about when these cases do arise. The next ayat number 50. Luckily, I was able to finish ayat number 49, and I have a lot of time in my hand. Namaz is at 8:20. It says, Ya ayyuhan nabi, inna ahlalna laka azwajaka allati atayta ujurahunna wa ma malakat yaminuka mimma afa Allahu alayk. It's a long ayat. It is addressing the Rasul. He said, O Prophet, indeed we have made lawful for you your wives whom you have given their dowries. And again, the concept of dowry, which sometimes, and I'm speaking based on my experiences, because I recite a lot of nikahs. Maulana, are you going to be announcing the mehr on the microphone? I said, if you don't want, I won't announce it. We don't want people finding out. Fair enough. Maulana, actually don't even mention the word mehr, because we got a lot of non-Muslim friends in them. So what? It sounds bad. They're saying, it's a contract. Well, it's an Islamic thing. It's a bridal gift. You think the wife does not accept any bridal gift throughout her marital life? No. Of course, she's going to get a lot of bridal gifts. So, well, this is also a bridal gift. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to start off this marriage on what? On the basis of a gift, a good gesture. What is a gift? Gift is a good gesture from one person to another. And in this case, husband is the one who has to provide for this. And the roots go back to all the way to the time of the Prophet, when the marriage of Bibi Fatmatul Zahra, salamullahi alayha, and Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam took place. Rasulullah asked Imam Ali, "O Ali, what is it you have to give my daughter?" Right? He asked for the hand of Janab Sayyidah. Right away, Rasulullah said, "What are you going to give? Or let's talk finances. What are you going to give? You want the hand of my daughter? Well, what can you offer her?" And he said, "I have this shield, I have this sword, and a very humble abode." Rasulullah said, "Well, the sword you need, because you need to go to the wars and battles, so you'll need to fight. And even if you don't go to the war and the battles, back in the day, you need to have arms with you so that you can protect yourself from the bandits and from these people who are outside. So for your own protection, you needed this. Shield you don't need. You're a brave man, you don't need a shield. Let's go ahead and sell your shield." So they sell the shield of Amir al-Mu'mineen, 400 dinar or dirhams. 400 dirhams, Rasulullah bought the household things. For example, a bed, some utensils, some pots, for cooking, and kitchen stuff, kitchenware, stuff like that will be needed for the newlywed bride, when she enters the house. And so that's where the concept of dowry comes into play. In our cultures, it reversed. While there is a dowry which husband gives, or at least puts down on the paper, who's going to give, right? The woman will go ahead and forfeit and say, "Oh, I forgive you for all the dowry." That's the concept that we have. That's a wrong concept. When you set a mehr, you should pay that mehr. Some of it right away. If you can't pay the entire thing, the rest of it later on. The word for mehr is sidq or sadaq. Sadaq means righteousness. When you give this mahar, you're showing that you're righteous. When you don't give, you're showing that you're unrighteous. You're starting off on the wrong foot from the very beginning. And then further, to make it worse, in our cultures, we have the concept of jahez, where while the husband must pay the dowry, oh, we're going to pay the dowry at the time of divorce. Who has to worry about it now, right? Usually the concept is dowry comes in at the time of divorce. No. You should give it right away. Number two, the concept of jahez, that the girl is coming to this house. She should bring whatever she likes from her house. So now there's a burden on the parents of this girl. They have to go ahead and buy all these things. What did Rasulullah do? If we are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we believe that they are our role models, then what did Rasulullah do? What did the father of the bride do? Father of the bride asked the husband, what do you have? He said, this is what I have. He said, let's go ahead and sell this, get the money, and buy household stuff. Where is it that the daughter and the girl has to bring all these things with her in as part of the marriage? Not anything. So all of this is totally un-Islamic. It has to do with our cultures. In fact, many of the Shia cultures outside of the subcontinent, there's no concept of jahez. They don't even know the word. There's no concept of it that the girl has to bring. Yeah, if the parents are giving gifts, if the relatives are giving gifts, that's okay. But there's no obligation upon them. Seems like there's a list that goes, these are the things that you must bring with you if you're coming to my house. From the very beginning, putting them under the pressure. And of course, the horror stories that we have heard, a lot of marriages that fall apart due to this, and the Bollywood culture has also, played a vital role in all of this. So that's as far as the meher is concerned. How much should the meher be? Maulana, we want meher Fatimi. So for everything, we want to go back to Fatimatu Zahra salamullah alayha. But when it comes to the execution of it, we have nothing to do with Sayyida or Amirul Mu'mineen or Rasulullah. What is meher Fatimi? 400 dirham. Calculated in today's monetary value, if those dirham were silver coins, then maybe $1,400 in today's monetary value. If they were gold coins, then maybe upwards of $10,000, right? It's not going to be beyond between $1,500 to $10,000. Something in between would be qualified as meher Fatimi, right? The lower the meher, the better it is. The lower the meher, the lower the dowry, the better it is, because that's what the riwayat talk about. But anyways, it said, O Rasul, indeed we have made lawful to you your wives, whom you have given their dowries. Not after you divorce them. No, after you married them, you have given them their dowries. And those whom your right hand owns, and those whom Allah have gave you as spoils of war, and the daughters of your paternal uncle, daughters of your paternal aunts, and the daughters of your maternal uncle, and the daughters of your maternal aunts, who migrated with you, and a faithful woman. So these are the people that you can marry, right? So someone who's amongst the relatives, your uncles or your aunt's children, both from your father's side and both from your mother's side, these are someone you can marry with, and of course, outside there's no issue. The word that Allah uses here is afa'a. It refers to the wealth which comes from the possession of Muslims without battle. Why did Prophet have multiple wives? This is a big question. I might not be able to finish this off. So there are a couple of people that are mentioned. Those whom you given them their dowries. So this is the regular marriage that we are talking about. The nikah that happens in our societies is the nikah where there is a dowry. So Allah mentions that type of nikah. So when you marry someone, you go ahead and pay their dowries. So why did Rasulullah marry so many? That's a question that a lot of time non-Muslims also raise. They try to label, because if a person has multiple wives, which is of course unheard of, they blame the Muslims that they believe in polygamy. We do, but who amongst the men do you see that they are practicing polygamy? That's one of the things which is rarely practiced, right? Law of the land forbids having more than one wife. This is not permissible. And secondly, it's something which is even not practical. But it was a law based on what? Based on the fact that a lot of women at that time, in the time of Rasulullah, in the time of Imams, when men would go to war, they would die. There will be shahadat. Let's say 500 men went with Rasulullah for a war. 200 of them attained martyrdom. Now there are 200 widows in the city of Medina. What do you do with these 200 women? Muslims are not strong enough to provide shelter for them. They don't have, shelter homes to provide and take care of them. So the ayat of Quran comes down, Surah Nisa, O you those who believe, take from these widows and their children, their daughters, 2, 3, or 4. That ayat is there in Surah Nisa. But it's to whom? To those who are widowed and the daughters of widows. Them you take them. But if that's not the case, then of course there's no need. فَوَاهِدَةً. The ayat concludes with what? If you cannot uphold this justice, فَوَاهِدَةً, then remain married to just one person. Now, why did Rasulullah have? There was an exceptional rule. Firstly, I'll mention 4 or 5 points and inshallah I'll conclude. Firstly, this is how you tackle this issue. If someone of your colleagues, your schoolmates, someone whom you're debating with, they right away raise, oh, you believe in Prophet Muhammad? Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. They label Rasulullah with these names like warmonger, right? He went to all these wars. And, they also associate with him this concept because he had multiple wives. Firstly, there's no room for discussion of lust and desire in the marriages of Rasulullah. Since the Prophet remained married to one woman from the age of 25 until the age of 53, until her wafat, Bibi Khadija. He remained married to her for 25 years, and then when she died, he remained unmarried for 3 more years. Right? Him and Janabi Khadija were married for 25 years. Rasulullah was 53 years old. He didn't marry anyone else. He was, remained married to Janabi Khadija. So that's number one. So there's no concept of desires of, marrying multiple women. Secondly, all the tribes were against the Prophet, and Prophet had to break this unholy unity against him with a precise plan which would be best, simple, economical, and most natural and tabi'i. In order to achieve that, Prophet had to become son-in-law of different tribes. I'll tell you one secret of the tribes back in the day. According to the customs of the time, people considered their obligation to support their son-in-law. Even today, they support their son-in-law. Who doesn't support their son-in-law? They all do. But tribes back then, when you marry into a tribe, you were the son-in-law of the entire tribe. This person is our son-in-law. So Rasulullah, by marrying into a tribe, getting a daughter from that tribe, basically got the support of the entire tribe. They're not going to go against him. So when he preaches Islam, they're going to remain silent. If anything, they're going to support him in his venture, in his plans with Islam. So this was one of the ways of spreading Islam. That's why Rasulullah had these wives. Number 3, some of the marriages was to break the Jahili customs. Remember the story that we had in the middle of Ramadan when we were talking about the Prophet's marriage to Zainab bint Jahash, right? Rasulullah's adopted son, whom Zainab had married and then divorced, and Rasulullah married her. That was to break the Jahili customs, that your adopted son's wife and your adopted son is not your real son. So if he divorces his wife, that's okay. Fourthly, Prophet married some women without even consummating the marriage. They were just there. There was no relationship with Rasulullah. Similarly, he only proposed to some tribes and did not marry many into those tribes. And these behaviors became a means of communication. He would go. People wanted to. Even when it comes to the life of later Imams. You hear this regards to Imam Hasan-e-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. Of course, there are far-fetched stories that Imam married 300 women, 90 women, or I don't know, ridiculous amount of numbers. As if Imam had nothing else to do but to marry one day and divorce the second day. Marry one day, divorce the second day. That's all he was doing. Because he does not have the liberty to marry more than 4 at a time. So how can you associate 300 wives to him? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely wrong. Why is it there? Because the moment you associate more than one person in someone's life, as far as the marriage is concerned, you have stained their character. And they wanted to stain the character of Imam Hasan-e-Mujtaba. Why? He was standing up against Muawiyah. And therefore, they wanted to go ahead and lower the status of Imam Hasan. Anyways, so fifthly, if there was, any sort of carnal desires or urge, Rasulullah would have had many kids, but we find that there was not the case. Rasulullah only had one daughter with Bibi Khadija. He had two sons with Bibi Khadija who both died in their infancy. He didn't have any children from any other wife aside from Maria Qibtiyah, and that's it. All the other remaining 11 wives of Rasulullah, he didn't have any kids. So there was not the concept of, having carnal desires to fulfill those desires and whatnot. Sixthly, we should never compare ourselves with Prophet. We lag behind many things with just one wife, while Prophet was still the same ardent worshipper drowned in the irfan while doing tabligh and not for 1 second forsaking the religion of Islam, the main duty that he had. Right? You and I, we get so distracted with one person, let alone another person in our life. Rasulullah, he was still pursuing the main objective behind him being sent into this world, even with the multiple wives. In fact, if anything, Prophet was scolded for being too shy and timid when it came to, for example, many of the wives that he had to further the cause of it. But anyways, here, let me just conclude because I've run out of my time. The allegations just to go ahead and show a bad face to the Prophet. Now look, the Prophet of Islam, he was, God, I don't want to use those words from the member that they associate with him, just to lower the status and to degrade. And therefore a person said, well, I don't want to hear anything about that man. If that's his character, then I don't want to hear anything about him. No, he is someone, Allah says, إِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. O Prophet, we raised you on the highest standards of morality. So Quran heavily talks about the concept of marriage, the concept of divorce, and how marriage is easy, how divorce is difficult, because Allah does not want to see divorces happening in the world. The Arsh-e-Ilahi shakes, whenever there's a divorce that happens on this earth. Now, sometimes the divorces must take place, because you don't say, well, the person must live this miserable life and should be stuck with this husband or this wife for the rest of their life, and they should not divorce because the Arsh-e-Ilahi will be shaking. No such thing. If the divorce has to happen, it must take place. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. You can end this.